Cycle 3, Week 2 drawing. So we're doing mirror images. So start with reviewing the 5 elements of shape, or the contour shape. So dot family, circle family, straight line family, curved line, and angle line family. So you might just go through those, kind of quiz the kids a little bit on those, or you could have them get out their blank sheet from their portfolios and add another shape into each of those families is part of your review. For warm-up, using some type of mirror image warm-up. This one is really simple. This would be helpful for the younger kids, where the idea of reflecting an image instead of just copying it is new. So, copying would be just if they did the same thing, where a triangle is just over here, versus reflecting a mirror image. What we're want them to do today is starting from that line of symmetry. So these are bilateral symmetry, and 2 sides, and making it reflect from that center line. So we use the mirror to check or to see what that reflection should look like. So if we put the mirror on that line of symmetry, and the mirror should be up and down, or perpendicular to the paper, you'll be able to see, if you look just slightly to the left side, put your head just left, you'll be able to see that reflected image. And if you take your eyes and look over to the other side, you'll be able to check, just kind of move your eyes back and forth across the top of the mirror. You'll be able to see if what you've drawn lines up with that reflection. And so that's how we would do that. This is one of the warm-ups, or you could try perhaps with a little bit older kids, or kids that have done the mirror image before, to try the faces and vase exercise. This is an exercise detailed in the Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain by Betty Edwards, and this is a great way to kind of have students feel that shift of focus from the left side of the brain to the right side of the brain. She explains that really well in there. So we can do that same thing. So we put this right in the middle, and on that line of symmetry where it's being reflected, and see how, if I move my eyes across that line of symmetry, I can see the reflection here, and that it lines up the other side. So we can do that drawing down here. So you could have them look at it first, what it's supposed to look like, and then try drawing it. So in Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain, she talks about how you could have students trace or draw from, if they were just looking at it without this line drawing, and identify these parts. So like forehead, nose, mouth, lips, chin, neck, and that's really strongly left side of the brain, so the language side. And then when we move and we're trying to copy it, and we're focusing just on the curved lines and how far apart something is, how long something is, we're not focusing on identifying it. We're working on that right side of the brain, and that kind of feeling that conflict of trying to identify things, which is left side dominant, or versus the right side, where we're just focusing on the nonverbal kind of spatial things. So, but anyways, I have more notes on that in the lesson plan notes. But so for kids, for doing this lesson plan, just have them work through it. You could model this alongside them, in lieu of the other one, just for time, perhaps, or you could do both. But, curved lines, and have them thinking about space, so you could even have them draw in that line of symmetry, if that helps, so they can kind of gauge the space between that center line, to the line they're drawing. Draw that curved line, and then when it kind of starts to come back in, and then back out towards the line of symmetry, curved lines, an angled line, and curves back in, another curve. It's just kind of a curvy shape. Okay, so then kind of checker, and then you would take your mirror to check that work, line it up, and then check and see how accurate it is. But then this is an opportunity to also talk about positive and negative space. So positive spaces. So if we just focus our eyes on the dark area, then we see the outline of the face. But if we focus our eyes on the white area, that's the negative space, the space between. That's, just introducing more vocabulary, more grammar that we can talk about in perhaps the fine arts sections. Okay, so that's warm up. Now we're going to do for the project, make a stained glass window. So here's some artists from this time period that we're starting in Cycle 3. So Frank Lloyd Wright, here's an example of very geometric, lots of angled lines, straight lines in this example, but also bilateral symmetry. So if we line that up, we could see that both sides are reflected, or even each of these sections have symmetry. And then this is just one example of a Tiffany stained glass lamp that would have, if you were looking down from the top, you could see the radial symmetry, that each of these sections is very close in symmetry. It's not perfect symmetry. And then for the project, we do perhaps mostly doing just two sides. And I didn't have extra tracing paper right now, but at school we will have tracing paper for this project, so that if students finish their pencil drawing, symmetrical drawing, that in class, if there's time, or at home, they could add marker to fill it in color, their picture, and that if being on tracing paper, they could take it home and you could put it up to the window and it would look like a stained glass. You'd have a little bit of light coming through. This is just an example from last year on tracing paper, that's a nice opportunity to be able to check your work also, to be able to see when the tracing paper is folded together. See, I can see if I fold it along that line of symmetry, I can see if my two sides line up. You can also see that, objects are that are by themselves, like these circles and dots, are easier to do reflected because it's just the same thing on both sides. But things that are angled towards that center line or a little bit off center in that half are harder. The kids have to think about that, how that's going to be angled, instead of copying it on this side where it would be like this, that it would have to angle towards that line of symmetry. So thinking about space, and then having students pay attention to the number of objects, or like if you had curves, how many times it curves up and down, paying attention to those details and talking through that. So that's what the tracing paper looks like. So for the project today, you could have kids, if you wanted to do it within a certain shape, like a rectangle, you could have them start by drawing that rectangle and just draw one side. Straight lines to angles because they connect. And then with the younger kids, I would focus on those shape families, and just have them do, try each of those shapes. Maybe work right alongside of them. So circles, dots, angled lines, straight lines. With the older kids, you could have them think about, shapes, like or images like flowers or more complicated shapes, to challenge them a little bit more, and then reflect that. So we could check our work again to know what that looks like. Line it up. Line it up on that line of symmetry, so they know what it looks like, how it looks angled towards that line of symmetry. We'll start with our outside. Angled lines towards the center. And the circle, and it's a little closer to this edge than it is that edge. You get the idea. Now it's starting to look like you can make a silly face too, I suppose. But to fill in that space, and they could spend more time decorating it, make it more complicated. And then lastly, it's kind of a fun, fun artist to look at is M.C. Escher, and this is just another thing they could look at home too, or try doing. Tessellations. So, but this is more of a focus less on mirror images, but positive and negative space, and how you can see that the bird here and the space in between is what the fish are, especially along this center line. or the bird here, fish, and then he kind of stretches it out. But these are kind of extending the lesson a little bit in one way. And that is week 2.